Testing. 1, 2, 3.
We're in November now, way past October. But spooky season isn't over till I say it's over. We're back with more thrills and more terror at last on Backlook Cinema, the podcast. No, I don't want to go. I'm back. My name is Zoe, and that was the Warlock. Zoe is spelled Z-O or Z-O for those of you outside of the U.S. As you can see, it's in November. The Warlock's power is steadily getting weaker and weaker, and I suspect by the end of November, he will be totally flushed out of my system. Thank you for joining us. It is the 123rd episode, and I appreciate you downloading and streaming. We watch movies of yesteryear that I loved when I was growing up in the late 1900s. I talk about my favorite parts with a special guest, and I'll share a little bit of trivia along the way. If you like what you're about to hear, then please tell your family, tell your friends, and tell that convicted felon doing time at a backwater prison colony about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. As promised, I have a very special guest for you today. And I've been waiting for his return, his esteemed presence on Backlook Cinema, the podcast. Hold on. Let me pull up his credentials that were up, and then my pad went to sleep, and now I'm waking up the pad. It's like, Pad, wake up. It's time to go to work. So this fine gentleman, he's a producer extraordinaire of a most excellent podcast. He's interviewed some of the best actors, writers, and music composers known in all of television. He's built a fantastic community of followers who have gathered together for their love of Star Trek. The man of whom I speak is who is known throughout the cosmos as Producer John. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you John T. Bowles.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. I hate to say it, but that gathering of followers I've amassed, I am the worst at social media, which is why I let one of my other hosts handle all of it. And I know I just leave people crickets sometimes, but producer's life is a busy life, and you got to do what you got to do. That's why I have a good team.
I believe that you are the reason why I can't even say the words. Your social media, I still can't say it. Your social medias are lit. I think you are a big part of the success that the podcast has. Producer John is, of course, the producer of Open Pike Night, and he's a voice on Green Shirt podcast. If you haven't been listening to those, you should go ahead and check those out. And so John, what have you been doing in the meanwhile? So Open Pike Night is obviously a watch show where people gather together and watch Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and then they're able to call in and leave a voice message on Open Pike Night and talk about various things about the show. And then they also get to leave questions for your guests, like actors Anton Mont or the actor that plays Mortegas.
Melissa Davia.
Melissa Davia, hashtag Mortegas. And
Mortegas, yeah.
And various other, you've had writers on your show. You've had, I think, the director on your show.
We talked to one of the directors. We want to talk to more. We've talked to the showrunners, like Eva Goldsman and Henry Alonzo Myers. I mean, we've talked to more people than we ever planned on, but there is one thing that we haven't really done that you are actually more qualified at, because Zoe is one of our most dedicated repeat callers to the show, and we don't actually have, we don't do that. So I don't know what the anxiety or delight or joy is every week when we put out the cry for help, because Open Pike Night is a call-in show. It may not be a live call-in show, but I'll tell you what, Zoe, your voice and all the other voices of folks that call in and lend, I will say, lend credence to the three of us, Jesse, Cam, and I, who host the show, lend a broader range of voices. We're three white dudes, and, it's nice to have not just three white dudes asking questions of somebody. I wish that we could, and maybe we should reach out to everybody we've interviewed and say, can we just put together a compilation of the joy on your faces as they hear the calls, because the guests love it. We're talking Star Trek actors, directors, writers, costumers. Bernadette Croft was great. The showrunners, they love hearing the other voices. And it's so much fun. And then with Green Shirt, that's Cam, who's also on Open Pike Night, is watching Star Trek The Next Generation for the first time now, 30 years later. And we're going through that episode by episode. And it's definitely more of a raunchy comedy type podcast than Open Pike Night is, but it's pretty dang fun to listen to and talk. And we're almost done with season 6. We're nearing the end of the TNG run, but there's still movies, there's still Picard, there's still plenty of years of Green Shirt to come.
Right. And you've also started dipping into Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, we do the DS9 Minute, where we cover one episode of Deep Space Nine in 9 minutes. The way we put it is, listen to Green Shirt after you watch the TNG episode we're talking about. Listen to the DS9 Minute before you watch the DS9 episode we're talking about. Because that one's just goofy. That one is just like off the cuff. We all try and get 9 thoughts out in 9 minutes total. So that's 4 people trying to get 9 thoughts out. So we each have 15 seconds to spout off about something. And so far it's working pretty well.
Oh man, that's pretty awesome. So another thing I wanted to ask you, but you just did a call-in where you asked for questions of what your listeners might have of the show, because this is like the first time that you have asked your listeners to ask you guys questions and not like your guests questions, like the writers and producers or whatnot. But there is a thing that you do sometimes. Like this is like in one case, it was when you had the science advisor for that show on the podcast.
Oh yeah, Dr. Aaron McDonald. Yep.
You created this fantastic intro where you kind of cobbled together of some of the other guests that were on the show that referenced her and talked about how important her contribution was to the show. So are you doing that? Or are you using AI?
Yeah, I do the audio collages. Thank you. No, it is so fun. I would say, the one thing, if I would do those for every guest if I could. It really is. It comes down to how clearly, we give our callers 90 seconds, and it comes down to how clearly they can, like if somebody called in and said, here is a compliment for the person, and then here is a question for the person, and I got 8 or 10 calls like that, I would do one of those collages every time, because it makes the person cry almost every time, especially when we can get some of their coworkers' praise in there. And I really enjoy doing it. It's like one of my, those types of projects that just scratch the creative itch for you. Is I love putting somewhat cheesy inspirational music behind quotes, complimenting people and praising them, and then just watching them kind of melt down as they hear everybody telling them how awesome they are. So I love doing it. And that would be, if I had one wish for Open Pike Night, it would be that we would get more calls that are half a question, half a compliment, and I could just trim those together. But it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to make those.
What really impressed me is like when you did that intro for the science advisor, what had happened was you had to comb through the interviews of your guests. So sometimes this is like an hour and a half or 2 hours of audio, and find out where they gave that compliment, clip that, and then paste that together with all the other ones. That must have took a while to put together.
So, okay, actually, so we recorded this episode you talked about. We recorded last night our Behind the Bricks episode, and I didn't talk about this. So what I do is when I'm editing that interview, I set those clips aside while I'm editing that interview in hopes that we will get that person. And so sometimes it's like I got to blow the digital dust off of a file folder and be like, oh yeah, somebody did pay them a compliment 18 months ago, and here I've got it set aside. So I didn't do that I think I started doing that right around the time, I think the second time somebody mentioned Dr. Aaron, I started pulling clips whenever somebody mentions names, which for somebody like Bernadette Croft, the costumer, was insane because she mentioned, and I know this because I went through the whole transcript cleaning it up and correcting spellings on names. She mentioned like 27 people in that interview.
Right.
And it's like, man, I don't know if we'll ever interview some of these. I know we won't for, other designers that inspired her, but everybody in her department, I pulled that out and set it aside.
That's incredible work. I feel like you found the cheat code for repeat guests on your show.
I'm hoping so. We've had a couple so far. I mean, Henry Alonzo Myers and Bill Wolkoff have both been back multiple times, and we're just waiting for SAG-AFTRA to get a fair deal from the AMPTP, and we have talked directly face-to-face to a lot of those actors, and like, we will come back as soon as SAG-AFTRA has a fair deal, and that's fair.
Right.
Yeah, we're not gonna make them break their rules.
I feel like they're very close, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to get a deal until after Christmas because it's so close. It's so close to when they take a break anyway.
Yes.
I feel like they're going to just run the clock out. But here's hoping for a miracle, right? Because
I know. I'm right there with you.
Right.
I do think, sadly, for any Star Trek Strange New Worlds fans, I would not hold my breath for anything earlier than May of 2025.
Right.
And that is best case scenario.
Right. Because what me and I think what a lot of other people had hoped for was like after they had settled with the writers that they would quickly settle with the actors. But, we didn't account for ego and pride and just I don't know, maniacal attitude that some people will have. And it's like, no, we're not. Because the theory that I heard is why they didn't settle with the actors right away is that they didn't want to look like they were capitulating too soon.
Yes.
They didn't want to look weak, right? And I'm like, come on, guys.
So while money is just pouring out of their pockets into nothingness, money that doesn't even exist for real.
Right.
They're just like, no, we got to pretend we're tough. It's like, not tough.
Right.
You guys aren't tough. You aren't creative. You work in offices justifying your little empires.
Right. And we've seen snippets of them trying to use AI to try to bolster the programming, and it's not going to work. I'm pretty sure that you've heard the news about what happened with a lot of the Marvel shows and movies. I think Variety came out with an article about they weren't even using showrunners or something like that. It was like they were taking the concept of the small writer's room or the tiny writer's room, and they had stripped it down to like its constituent elements to to try not to have any writers at all. And and I was like, you know what? That's why some of these shows weren't hitting like I was hoping that they would.
Like, hey, Marvel, guess what? We can tell. Everybody can tell. There seemed to be a dramatic drop-off in quality as soon as season 1 of everything came out.
Right.
Phase 4 came out. Yeah.
And a lot of it, I still liked it. And it's like I apologize for a lot of the shows. But then when this story came out, I was like, that's why. And it's like when you look at some similar shows in comparison, like there's Invincible on Amazon. There's what do you call it? Generation V that's out now. There's The Boys. All of these are on Amazon, and The Boys is just so much more better than anything that Marvel has put out in the last couple of years. So I'm like, why? And now you see why. Now you see why it's so much better. And then there's another example. There's on HBO there was Sandman. That's also so much better than anything they put out in a while. So like now that you've seen a little bit behind the curtain, you kind of like, go pay these people. Give them. Yeah. It's like I feel like I'm being shortchanged on entertainment. I'm being cheated out of some of the best stories, and I would appreciate it if you would stop doing that, sir.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a bunch of producers and people in offices shouldn't come interfere with the making of a film or a TV show. I wonder if anybody's going to talk about that today.
Absolutely. Thanks. That's an excellent transition. But before we move into the movie that we're about to talk about, why don't you go ahead and give everybody your plugs of social media, your websites, and anything that's out there?
Sure thing. Open Pike Night is at Open Pike on pretty much every social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, whatever, Blue Sky, I think, Threads. We're all over the place. And openpike.com. We want to hear your voice. If you've never called in before, go to openpike.com, sign up for our newsletter. We pretty much only put out editions of that when we're calling for folks to lend their voices to the show. And call in. You can just go to that website, hit a button, and record right into your phone. Or just record a voice memo and email it to us, openpike@gmail.com. And that is, Open Pike everywhere. And then Green Shirt is GreenShirt87 on Twitter and Green Shirt Podcast on Instagram. And those can both be found on every podcast platform. And check them out if you're a Star Trek fan. I think they're fun. I love doing them with my friends, and I love all the new friends we've made doing Open Pike Night.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate being part of that community.
And we absolutely appreciate it too. Yeah.
Thanks. So let us move on to our first segment. Let us know about the movie that we're about to talk about.
Okay, we are talking about Alien 3 today from 1993, I believe, directed by David Fincher. And definitely the most maligned and lowest rated of the Alien movies. I think unfairly. I'm not saying this is a perfect movie. I do think this movie is unfairly judged, and yeah, I enjoy watching it. I've always enjoyed watching it. So when we left our hero, Lieutenant Ellen Ripley, she had laid herself in a sleeping pod for her long voyage home after narrowly escaping a dangerous alien. This sounds like the opening of last week's episode, but apparently this is how all the Alien movies are going to start off from here now on. This time, however, her escape craft is damaged and it crash lands on a prison planet. She hopes that the alien threat is behind her. Did she leave it all behind, or will she have to relive this terrifying experience?
Yeah, so I guess as we watch the movie, she's obviously going to relive that terrifying experience. Otherwise, we're not having a movie. Otherwise, in a different reality, there was no alien threats, and she was kept in the infirmary the entire time, and the corporation came and picked her up, and that's the end of the movie.
No issues, yeah.
But of course, obviously, it's called Alien 3, so we're going to have aliens in the movie. Otherwise, why bother leaving the house? So, this movie was released May 22nd, 1992. Or 93. I guess IMDb is saying 92. Produced by 20th Century Fox and Brandon White Production. It grossed over $55 million. So in today's money, that's $120 million in the US and Canada, and over $159 million worldwide. And adjusted for inflation, that is $387 million. I mean, it's not bad. It kind of breaks even, kind of, sort of. It justifies making a sequel. And then the worldwide reported budget is $50 million. And so that's $109 million today. So if you can imagine today's movie, that kind of compares with like The Nun. That they spent $109 million to make the movie, and they made worldwide $348 million. So
yeah.
It kind of eked out a pretty good. It made even. Let's just put it that way. It
made even, like, especially with Hollywood math.
Right.
Yeah. To all of us, that's like, wow, I'll take that investment every day.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah.
So there was like, well, we made just enough money that maybe people will come back for Alien 4. So let us know who's starring in this movie.
All right. Obviously, we have Sigourney Weaver starring as Lieutenant Ellen Ripley. Upcoming, she has several movies: Dust Bunny, The Gorger, and Avatar 3, 4, and 5. Right.
She's doing all of the avatars. It was hard to go back to some of her movies because, like, next week we'll be doing another Sigourney Weaver movie again. So I don't know what I'm going to put down.
Aliens, yeah.
Right. Just a bunch of stuff that nobody knows about. Just a bunch of movies that Sigourney Weaver was in that. It's like, yep, she was in that one.
Yep.
So yeah, she's
fantastic actor, obviously. She's been in a lot of our favorite movies, and I can't wait to see what she's going to do next. Up next is Charles S. Dutton. He plays Leonard Dillon. He's been in Gothica, A Time to Kill, and Legion. And he's one of my favorite actors, but I don't remember seeing him in any of these movies.
I remember him from Gothica. I remember because I think he was the husband who gets murdered in that. I saw him recently. I was watching Longmire on Netflix.
Oh, was he on Longmire?
He was in it for I think maybe 5 or 6 episodes. He had a little story arc there, and I got to tell you, that was 20 plus years later. I'm like, he looks younger in Longmire than he does in this movie. Like, dang, Charles S. Dutton, you're gonna live forever. And joining him was another Charles, a great Charles, both of them. Charles Dance as Dr. Jonathan Clemens, The King's Man, Johnny English Strikes Again, The Last Action Hero. I love him in The Last Action Hero. He's
one of my favorite characters in The Last Action Hero. And we covered that back in episode 57. So, just a fantastic actor. Obviously, most people know him, at least nowadays, as one of the main Lannisters from this popular show called Game of Thrones. So just a consummate professional.
Oh yeah.
Up next we have Brian Glover. He plays Harold Andrews, and he's been in An American Werewolf in London, 1942, A Love Story, and Snow White, A Tale of Horror. I'm not familiar with most of these films, mainly because I think these are like British films, and he's a British actor, as is most of the cast. And similarly, I'm not familiar with most of the cast. One of the problems with this movie is that many of the characters don't necessarily stand out. So I'm just kind of plugging in people who I think might be important, or I'm plugging in the actors who play characters who might be important.
I think you made good choices.
Right.
Yeah. Because next up we have Paul McGann, who plays Walter Gollak, and I think plays him wonderfully. He's in The Three Musketeers, Letters from Baghdad, and Queen of the Damned. He is also, I think, the 8th Doctor Who.
Oh, okay.
And I believe he only had
an audio
a movie.
Drama. I think he was.
I know he like it was the mid '90s, the U.S. movie version of Doctor Who that he played.
Oh,
I think
that was that guy. He looks so different in this one.
And he did, right? I just like, man, it is hard to recognize that's him. And that was only like 3 years before Doctor Who. And then obviously, I think in the War Doctor timeline, we get to see they made a short film with him transitioning to the War Doctor. But that's for our Doctor Who nerds.
Right.
I definitely don't know what I'm talking about.
Up next is Ralph Brown. He played Francis 85 Aaron. He's been in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and Wayne's World. I couldn't find a lot of movies that I'm familiar with him in, but I just love.
I remember him from both those.
Right, right.
I love him in Wayne's World.
I just love that character in Alien 3, and the fact that his nickname was 85.
Yeah. He is a somewhat tragic hero in this film. He could have been a joke. He could have been just like the downtrodden guy, but there's certain moments where it's like, man, this guy he really is doing the best he can. He's just in over his head, but he doesn't back down from it. So yeah, I like him. And we get the return of Lance Henriksen as Michael Bishop. Does he have a first name?
Oh, I didn't know. Michael. Oh, yeah. So.
The human version and Bishop.
Right. What I did was I kind of dug into what you call it? What do you call it? The Wikipedia version of Alien.
Oh, okay.
And found that he had a first name. I think that they mentioned his first name in the next movie, but I kind of cheated a little bit here.
Okay.
In the movie,
like it. I didn't know that.
Right. In the movie, he's credited as Bishop too.
Yeah. And he's got upcoming. He's still going at it, still acting. Altered Reality 1, and When Jack Comes Back. And obviously, man, every movie in the 80s and 90s, action, like this man has been acting forever.
Yeah, he's been acting for a long time. And what was remarkable is, like, I guess in both Aliens and Alien 3, I guess from my perspective, when I originally watched it way back when, he seemed like an older character. But now when I just watched Alien 3 and I watched Aliens like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh, he looks rather young, right?
Yeah.
That's why he's been acting for so long. It kind of reminds me of like professional wrestlers, and they're still wrestling. It's like, how are these guys still wrestling? Like, some of them are just retired. Like, I think The Undertaker seemed like he just retired, like maybe last year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was like, what? And even last year, I'm like, why is he still wrestling? And as it turns out, when you look at when he first debuted and a lot of his earlier work, it's like, oh, he was like a baby when he came in wrestling.
Yeah.
He could not have been more
than
21 years old. It's like he just painted his face with makeup to make him look older. And then it took like 10 years for him to grow into his makeup, where he didn't really need it anymore to look older. It took some time. So finally we have... Oh, see, here's what's funny. I actually went to YouTube to try to figure out how to pronounce his name. And I gotten kind of good at it, but I totally forgot how to pronounce his name now. So I'm going to do the best I can.
You can do
his name is Pete Postlethwaite. I tried.
I think that's
Yep.
right.
It's close. And what's funny is that he plays a character named David Postlethwaite, and he's been in the Usual Suspects, The Town, and The Lost World Jurassic Park. And he's just got that face, man. Like whenever you see a movie, he's like, oh, it's that guy. He's just got that face. You recognize him instantly. So I definitely needed to put him in the credits, even though he doesn't really do much in this movie. But he's just
it's a small role, but
yeah,
he's good in small doses. So
I think my favorite is when he was in the Lost World Jurassic Park. I want to buck the big one, right? That my man came in there determined
Let's get this
to kill
movable
dinosaurs.
feast on the road,
right? Yeah. All right, we're about to get into this guy in the trivia, but let's talk about the director.
All right, this was directed by David Fincher. It was his first major motion picture. He went on to direct Seven, Gone Girl, Panic Room, The Social Network, Fight Club. I mean, this is David Fincher, like, just a fantastic director.
Right, and here's the thing. This movie is kind of an anomaly when you look at his whole body work. Like, even if you look at some of the less esteemed movies that he made since he made Alien 3, those movies are still regarded as really good movies. So when you look at it, all of the movies that he's done, is like, how did Alien 3 came so bad? A lot of people would say that it's because he was a first-time director. But this is the classic example of studio interference that has happened.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I definitely believe that. I'm glad it didn't destroy his career, because you can see David Fincher in this movie. You can see the director he will become, even with all the interference. There's so much Fincher style in this film, and I definitely look forward to talking about that.
Absolutely. Also, this movie was written by Dan O'Bannon, Ronald Shusett, and Vincent Ward. So O'Bannon, he's given credit because, hold on, am I saying this right? I think he was the one that did the, wrote the original Alien movies, so he's always going to get credit.
He did the original Alien movie.
Right.
Yeah.
But outside of the Alien movies, he also did Heavy Metal, Dean, and Dead and Buried. Oh, God, totally. Or is that Dean and Buried? I don't even know anymore. And Invaders from Mars. Also, we have Shusett, he wrote W and The Final Terror and Free Jack. And then Ward wrote A State of Siege and Virgil and Map of the Human Heart. Now, I haven't seen any of these movies, although I
haven't seen any of those.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious about Free Jack. I've always been curious about Free Jack.
Oh, Free Jack is good. I've seen Free Jack. I haven't seen any of Ward's stuff.
Right.
I've seen, I love Free Jack.
Right. And that was written by Ronald Shusett. So I really don't have anything to go by as far as the quality of their writing. But I don't think that the failure of this movie has anything to do with them. I'm pretty sure that there have been a dozen other writers uncredited that had their hands on trying to put this movie together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and the music for the film was composed by Elliot Goldenthal, who is composed for A Time to Kill, Michael Collins, Batman and Robin, Titus, and Heat. And man, that is a range. That is a lot of different types of movies he's composed music for.
Right.
Heat, obviously, man. I definitely like his composing style, because if you take his music out of Heat, it's still a great movie, but it's not as great a movie as it turned out to be.
And what's also interesting is that music and music composition in movies is one of the things that can't miss. It's like it's almost guaranteed. It's like you can have a totally messed up movie, but as far as when we're talking about the composer and music composition, they usually get somebody who is at least confident. And this guy, Elliot, he knocked it out of the park. I think he has a bright career ahead of him. If he isn't already dead, I don't think he's dead. I didn't check. But but yeah, he's done some great work. And I really enjoyed the soundtrack for this movie. I listened to it the other day and I was like, yeah, it works. Yeah. You know that a soundtrack works when it sounds good outside of the context of the movie.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So that's it for the opening credits. If you're enjoying the show, you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our website, backlickcinema.com/shop. I'm going to be putting out some new designs soon, some Christmas designs. So look out for those. Maybe I should put a newsletter to let people know when there are new designs. I should do something different. Get the word out. So
yeah, check it out. I mean, yeah, they're pretty fun to be able to reach out to a lot of people easily that way.
Right. So now we're going on to our next segment. We're going to talk about our top 5 favorite parts. So why don't you get us started? Let us know what one of your favorite parts of the movie was. It could be the actor, it could be a scene, it could be a line of dialogue. What are we going with?
I'm going to go with the opening credits, and this is where especially I think you can see the director that Fincher will become, because if you take just the opening credits to this film, watch them, then watch the opening credits to Seven, and maybe swap the music on both of them, put Closer by Nine Inch Nails over these opening credits. It is so Fincher. It is the same opening credits sequence, the extreme close-ups, the flashes of gore, of, like slow on things like writing in the notebook in Seven, or the acid dissolving the glass in this, and then quick flashes of blood soaking some piece of cloth in this. We don't even know what's happening there. And then quick flashes in Seven. I just love seeing, like, this guy had his style established before he got big, and he has stuck with it, and it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, in cutting his teeth on directing numerous music videos, he's able to experiment with styles and then work with stuff he likes. And this is someone who's been planning on, like, he's been positioning his whole life on trying to direct a feature film one day, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do when he had an opportunity to direct his movies. So yeah, I do like. I didn't really denote it as the opening credit, just the crash and rescue, the beginning of the movie where you see flashes of Ellen Ripley in the sleeping pod, and then you see like the sleeping pod of the other people who would hopefully be rescued. Turned out they're not going to be rescued. The crash itself, the prisoners getting together to salvage the pod. So all of that was pretty great. It really kind of like set you up for an anticipation of what was going to happen, with a little bit of tension, because I think at this point when they're rescuing the thing, you kind of knew that it was a prison colony. So yeah, there was a lot going on, and it seemed to promise a greater story. So I did enjoy that. What else you got?
I really like that. I mean, Ellen Ripley is one of the greatest action heroes of all time in cinema. She is probably, in the well, she's definitely in the top 10 of like our lifetimes, and probably sadly the only woman on that list if a bunch of people voted on it. But this movie in 2023 context, the prisoners and the warden set very clear boundaries, and she just tramples all over those boundaries. They say, please stay away from us. Please don't wander around the prison. Please just hang out in the infirmary. We really do not want you. Like, we have decided on this way of life, and this is kind of our planet. So we're just asking you for a few days. And it's like, man, Ripley really does not respect consent and boundaries in a lot of this movie. And while I know that can be seen, and I'm not going to invalidate the fact of like, well, you know, she doesn't need to ask permission to exist. It's like, yeah, but it's just a few days. I'm not saying the outcome would have been any different. They were all dead the minute that ship landed on the planet. But it's to look at it through 30-year-old, you know, older eyes, like, man, Ripley, you they'll help you if you ask them, and if you just respect the boundaries they're setting.
I'll say what you won't say. Ripley, you're kind of being an asshole at this point. Yeah. Are you the asshole? Yes, you're the asshole.
A little bit.
It's not like they are mad because you're on the planet. They know that it's basically you're an outsider, and your very presence is messing with their harmony that they've been able to build, right? Because it's like they've accepted that they're prisoners. They've accepted that they're never going to go back to Earth to see their families again. And they've built a family amongst themselves. And your presence, like being a woman, being an object of desire, and some of them not being able to control themselves, you're kind of ruining the whole vibe we've got here.
Right.
So,
right. It's like, should they control themselves? Is it her responsibility for them? No, but they are asking you to just stay out of the way.
Right.
They didn't say, please walk around and do whatever you want and then attack her. They're like, no, please stay the hell away from us. And it's like, no, they, you know, she doesn't, I don't know. But also honestly, Clemens kind of doesn't respect that either.
Right.
And that surprises me a little bit for as good a character as he is.
That's true. And also kind of confusing that almost as soon as she get down there, she's about as DTF as they are. So it's like
that has got to be a studio interference thing. It's like, who thought Ellen Ripley would like I'm not saying that she's not allowed to have, you know, sexual desires like everybody else is. Like, she absolutely is, but man, that was a choice, and that sure doesn't feel. I'm curious which of the 9 writers on this film put that in and made it through to screen. It's like,
right.
I mean,
it doesn't make sense considering all of the trauma that she had to go through. It's like she had the trauma of if they were ever going to do something like that, it would have been in the first film, and it was almost in the first film. But they decided not to do it, probably due to pacing issues or whatever. They decided not to put that in there. In the first film, it was, they considered having a relationship with the captain. And they kind of put that in there because there was a scene.
Yeah. She and Dallas are flirting kind of.
Right. They're kind of flirting. Yeah. And she has like an argument with the captain. And then he starts to leave. And then she closes the door on him so that he couldn't leave. And there was a sort of sexual tension there. So if it was going to happen, it's going to happen in that movie. It's not, you don't really see that happening in the second movie unless it's happening with, what you call it, when she's at home. Like when she's at home before she goes out, you can see it happening at that time, but not really because she's still kind of traumatized.
And you know, it is the post-trauma response, like the fight, flight, flee, or fuck. It's like,
right.
If you have to bleep that out, but it's like she did just help, just lose an entire Marine contingent, her new surrogate daughter, the second daughter she's lost now in 3 movies. And I was like, I get that, but it's not played off like a release of tension. It really is just kind of like they're having a conversation, and then she's like, "Do you want to have sex?"
Right.
And
right.
she and Charles Dance are very charismatic performers, and they do the best they can. The after talk, I think, is a beautiful after conversation for a sexual scene like that. But man, they really shoehorned it in there, and you could have done this a lot more subtly, guys.
Right,
like you could have given us the pent up tension and needing a release, or just the actual desire. I don't know. It felt awkward.
It's like it's Ripley asked for sex the same way a man would. So
and I mean, that's her prerogative, and obviously Clemens was down for it, but it's like, man, I think what confuses me more than just the straight up asking for sex is like, why are you avoiding telling these guys what happened?
That was the other thing I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
That didn't make any sense. Why are you being so coy, Ripley? Why are we not telling them that you think that there's a dangerous beat? They don't want you there anyway. So it's not like you're fighting for credibility or anything like that. It's like, tell them.
In the last film, you yelled at the CEO of the company telling them to nuke a planet. And now you're like, I don't want to tell these prisoners, man. That'd be a little too much information.
Right. It's like, I might cause a panic. They're in prison. It's too late at this point.
They are already panicking.
Right. Yeah. It's like people start dying and she knows why they're dying, but she's not saying anything. And she's going to wait all the way until it's too late. Now the alien eats her boyfriend right in front of her face. And that's another one of my favorite parts. It's a great kill.
So pure horror movie. Like, that is one of the main, like, this is absolutely a horror movie. I think more than Aliens was, and obviously the first one is a horror movie, but this one returns to that.
Right.
And it, like, just as a horror movie, it does those moments very well.
Right. It's almost as good as when Samuel L. Jackson got 8 in, what's it called? Blue Sea, I think that's what it's called.
Oh, Deep Blue Sea.
Deep Blue Sea, right. Almost as good as that one.
Not gonna die down here.
But yeah, so that was a good part. That was a good kill, I should say. And this also was, I think I'll probably end up mentioning this in the trivia, but it's the first movie where you actually see the alien eat the people. It's not like just suggested. It's like he's chomping.
This alien is out of control, man. This alien is. I'm not quite sure what his for gendering terms, like what its goal is. Like, what are you doing with these guys? Because you eat like 20% of them, and we never see cocooning. We never see the aliens endgame. It is just in a frenzy, in a kill frenzy, which is also something new for the franchise.
Well, I haven't read any of the extra media surrounding the aliens, but it's obvious that they're kind of like a hive type of colony. It's like they work for a queen for the most part, but outside of that context, if they can't go and grab people and take them to the queen's chamber, then they're just going to grab people and eat them. I think that's because in the first movie, that's all the alien went, grabbed people and ate them.
That's true.
Apparently they grow extremely fast. They must have extremely fast metabolism because they grow from like an infant alien to a full adult alien in just a couple of hours. Just the amount of heat that generates must be enormous. Like,
a lot of calories, definitely a lot of inconsistency throughout the franchise. Like, how long does this take? Because it's in this one, it's minutes. In the first one, I think it's a couple of days. Yeah, it's all over the place. Right. But it's constantly molting, which I like that they showed in this.
Yeah.
I guess I'll make that my third point. I like the alien effect. I know there are points where you can see the merging of the puppet with the rest of the film. It looks a little bit fake or digital or whatnot, but overall, I like that they knew that it wasn't perfect, so they don't actually show you a bunch of full shots of the alien after its birthing scene. It's definitely very, very in the shadows.
Right. It was smart, and that just adds to the horror context of it. It's the kind of in the shadows. It doesn't it doesn't really show itself. It's a very much a stealth killer, and the best version of this that that I've seen recently was in Aliens, where the Marines are in the cavern and they're looking for the aliens. Like it's on my motion detector. It's swarming all over. I can see it, but they couldn't see it with their eyes. Yeah. And then behind one of the Marines, you see like the wall moving. And then you realize it's not a wall; it's an alien lifting up his head to look at the Marine.
Oh yeah, it's like they're moving all around us. Yeah, it's
right. So
tension building. Cameron was really good at that.
Yeah. That was good. So another part I liked was the so this is the part that kind of lived with me through like my whole life, because it's like Alien 3 was not one of my favorite movies. This movie is kind of a departure from most of the other movies that I do on this show. So normally it's a movie where it's like it's my favorite movie unequivocated. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. So that's what I'm going through. But Alien 3 I can't really count among that number. But still, even though it's not one of my favorite movies, this particular line just sticks out to me because I loved everything about it. So this scene is when Ripley is trapped with these convicts. These convicts are going to rape her and beat her up. And then she's rescued by Dylan. And he starts beating one of them with like a stick or a crowbar or something like that. And he tells Ripley, "Take off. I got to re-educate some of the brothers." I just love that part. I love that part. I love that line. And then just like before she leaves, she hits one of the prisoners in the face.
Yeah. Right. Like that's Ripley.
Right.
Yeah. No. And another, I think, because that's one of the moments, and Fincher's really good at this. Several times throughout this film, we get a heavy buildup of tension or fear. You know, they're about to rape her, and then Dutton comes in, helps rescue her. She helps fight them off, and he gives that line to give us the release, a little bit of comedy. That's the same as she's in the medical bay and her boyfriend gets eaten, and then she runs down and she's yelling at the warden, and then he just gets grabbed, and that's the comedy. like Fincher is very good at I'm going to give you the tension, and then I'm going to give you a minute to laugh, right, and then we're going to get right back into the tension too. He's really good at balancing that, and apparently always has been, because he was doing it in this film, and I think he does it well.
Right. So what's another one of your favorite parts?
I love how lived in this planet feels. Like, we get the backstory. These guys technically aren't even prisoners anymore. Like, they still run with a warden and with a staff with 85 and Clemens, but they basically run the planet now. You know, the inmates run the asylum, but they do it because they know there's nowhere else for them that they will feel like they fit in. And so I love with Golic, the showing us how Golic gets blamed for the murders and how he gets, bathed in blood and somewhat traumatized, somewhat like deifies the alien, the dragon. These guys are exploring this planet. They're like, we need to know how big this, I don't know, let's go find out what this whole planet is and see if there's, apparently they're hunting for like supplies, just seeing if there's anything left behind in these abandoned corridors. But it's a really just like, hey, we're trying to work together. We're trying to make this work. And just ship crashes and just ruins everything.
Right. And it's funny because another reason that they choose to remain there is that they know that they're horrible people and they don't trust themselves outside in civilized society. So they choose to remain there because that they know that they can function there. It's almost like the type of person who's like been incarcerated and then they'll go and break a window so that they can get themselves thrown back in jail because they don't feel like they can function in real life.
Yeah, it's the whole institutionalized thing from Shawshank Redemption. It's like, this is what I know, and this is the only place where I've found peace.
Right.
So can I stay?
Right. Yeah, that was the whole thing in that movie, sidebar, for Shawshank Redemption, where you had this one character and he was fighting because he didn't want to be released. He was in jail fighting. He was trying to kill one of his fellow prisoners because he thought if he killed that dude, then they would revoke his
they let him stay.
Yeah, they let him stay in prison.
It's
right?
his whole adult life. It's
right,
all he knows.
That's so back on track with the conversation. Another part of one of my favorite parts was so I'm trying to figure out which one should I'll do the Bishop dialogue. So when she reactivates the Bishop android. So that part was cool. That's another part that had stuck with me over the years. I love that part. I love that she had basically rescued the remains of Bishop, was basically Justice Head, and she started getting tools, and it looked like something that was a box that was created in the 1950s, and she just starts sticking stuff
like old school Android, oscilloscope type thing.
There's something about that I absolutely loved. And so she starts sticking in the remains of the android, and then so Bishop, he's able to come online a little bit, and then he gives her the information that she wanted to know. She wanted to know what caused the crash and everything. And she wanted to know if there's an alien still on the ship. And he confirmed that there was an alien on the ship. And then the last part he said was, he said, I know they could probably rework me, but I'll never be part of the top of the line again. So if you could just unplug me, right?
Yeah.
And then
I know, right? Vanity much. Come on, Bishop.
And then there's like the effects on there, the makeup effects. I think it was a robot.
I think they went
the animatronic
full robot
effect
for that.
was pretty awesome. He had that
so
goo board
good
on him, right?
Yeah,
and it just looked visceral and real and honest. So I really enjoyed that.
And with that of like her knowing how to do that, it's like, yes, we established it in Aliens. We established it in Alien. Like, Ripley is a blue collar worker. She is a long haul trucker, and then she is a dock loader in Aliens. And it's like, yes, she would know how to do this electronics work. Like, she has had to repair equipment herself before, even after 57 years in hypersleep. It's like, androids, they didn't change them that much.
Oh, and also she did that in the original Alien. She did that with Ian, or however you say that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is an established thing. Like, this is great. It's great. She's our blue collar action here.
Right.
And the fifth thing I picked, like I was talking about with 85, the scene when she goes back to get her medical scan, his performance in that scene, like the heartbreak she's feeling, he matches it with playing so well. It's like, I don't quite understand this, but at the same time, it's like he knows, like, oh no, this poor woman has a monster inside of her. And just that little scene between those two, I'm like, man, this guy, like, he could have been just the sort of the I can't remember the lieutenant's name from Aliens, Gorman. He could have kind of been a Gorman type where nobody likes him. Everybody's always down on him, making fun of him. He gets knocked out early, finally has his hero moment. This guy is just like, I'm doing my best here, man. And I really appreciate how well that scene is played, when it could have very well been played as like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. Please help me, Ripley kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, I think it's an intense scene, and I think it really helps, again, show like, yeah, every prisoner on this planet, these are real characters. These are people. These aren't just background for Ellen Ripley to fight an alien with.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that scene as well. I liked the main part about that scene where he was like, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to show you. I don't.
Yeah. And it's like, that's a very, like, I believe that. Yeah. It's like, this is bad. It's like, yeah.
He's like, oh no, this is worse. This is worse than what you think. It reminds me of like when I was in the hospital one time, and I needed to get like an anesthetic or needles. They wanted to put a needle in my arm, and I wanted to see the doctor put the needle in my arm because that, I guess I was like maybe 15, 16, something like that. I needed to see it because I felt most comfortable looking at him sticking me with the needle, but the nurse wouldn't let me look. So she She held my head away from the doctor. Like, you don't want to see this. You don't want to see this. So instead of being able to look at the doctor, anticipate him sticking me, I'm looking away and I'm feeling it, without being able to see it. So that was, I don't know if that was traumatizing. Annoying was probably the most accurate answer. But that's what that scene reminds me of, a moment from my childhood.
Yeah, it's like trying to protect you. And I get that with that happening with you. I don't think I've ever seen anything that you cannot predict how somebody will react than blood or medical work happening on somebody. Like, happening on yourself is one thing, but man, the reactions to seeing it happen to other people. Like, I've had friends who start to get woozy when they're there with me while I'm giving blood. Like, I'm just donating blood. You're not doing anything. Why are you getting woozy? Like, blood is a very visceral thing, and humans, like, you cannot predict how you're going to react to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the last one I have, my fifth favorite part, is basically the whole end of the movie. Ripley's sacrifice. They kind of did something different. They didn't have a countdown with the thing blowing up. They didn't do it this time, but they had to make a trap for the alien. The trap works. So it's basically it's Ripley and Dylan fight for who's going to sacrifice themselves for the alien, right? Because one of them had to stay down as bait. And at first it was going to be Ripley, and then basically Dylan forces her to save herself. And it wasn't like the alien was primed to attack Ripley anyway, because Ripley is carrying the queen. Now, Ripley has the queen alien growing in her body. This is why she wasn't attacked earlier, and why the alien is avoiding any confrontation with her,
almost protecting her.
Yeah, protecting her.
Get into the trap finally.
Trying to kind of smiling at her at times, just kind of winking at her if he had eyes.
Yep, exactly.
So Dylan forces her to leave, and she starts climbing out of this pit where they're anticipating pouring molten lead. And Dylan realizes that he's not escaping. So he's basically allowing the alien to attack him. Then he's going to hold on to the alien while he's being bitten by the alien. And it was like, come on. Is that all you got?
Moment.
Is that all you got? That's the plan. This dude is awesome.
Go down shooting. Yeah. It's
right. And then they poured him on lead. I thought that whole sequence was really good. The stuff that preceded that sequence was not my favorite part, with the alien chasing down the hallways, because you kind of get lost in the narrative as to what is happening. You don't even really fully know the plan of what they were doing, is like what they're talking about. You start getting lost a little bit, and I think that was one of the problems with the story. But when they finally trapped the alien and they were going to pour the lead, and that whole sequence, that was pretty good. And then at the same time, you see the company, the ship is coming to the planet. Side note, you notice that the company ship, well, you get the feeling that the people at Babylon 5 kind of copy the ships used on Alien. You kind of notice that, right? I think the B5 ships are a lot larger, and they added like a turn thing for artificial gravity, but they look like I was like, oh, wait a minute, because I don't want to say that Aliens copy from B5, because that's impossible. But what I can say is that B5 definitely took inspirations from Alien. So
I agree. Like, looking at that, I was like, it kind of looks like that.
Right. So you see the company ship coming, and then it juxtaposes with the prisoners and Ellen trying to deal with the alien, to the people from the company walking onto the prison platform, and then going into the depths of the station looking for Ellen and trying to transfer her to the company or whatever. So that was all cool. But then you finally get to the end where she confronts the human bishop that created the Bishop series robots. And he's like, the company sent me here to give you a friendly face. And I'm thinking to myself, why would he know that he was the friendly face? I guess maybe they got her recording or something about how Bishop saved the day.
Did she give a really good journal entry about how cool she thought Bishop was before she went to sleep?
That must be it. And then, So they, so before that happens, or during that time, somewhere around that time. So the alien is like they think the alien is dead. Everybody's cheering. It's a fake out. The alien comes out of the hot molten lead, which is crazy. And, still alive, still now is mad enough at Ripley to want to attack her. Like, I don't care about the queen. I'm going to kill you now because you had all this hot liquid lead poured on me.
Yeah.
And then the guy screams.
I'm guessing it's slowly cooking while it's it's
probably.
I think it's going to die either way.
Right. And
Yeah.
then I think the alien is like, I'm taking you with me. And then the guy's like, he's hot. Activate the sprinklers. And the alien turns on the sprinklers and the alien explodes. Miraculously, I guess the heat had neutralized the acid blood because nobody is crying over being
nobody gets sprayed with any acid.
Yeah.
And I do like the I like that they had at least shown us the bucket popping open when the water hit it after the fire disaster earlier in the film. It's like, okay, they gave us the foreshadowing there, set up that like this is going to be important, that you guys need to see this. But yeah, it's like, well, all right, alien, like no acid reaction. So yeah, I wonder if heat is the great neutralizer, like you said.
Right. That's what I'm going to go with. I'm creating fan fiction right now that heat has extreme heat has somehow neutralized the alien acid blood because it explodes. Everybody should have been sprayed with acid. And been like, ouch, that hurt, or something like that, but nobody did.
Also, this lead poisoning is pretty rough.
Right. But I do appreciate how they solved the death fake out issue. That was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to Bishop, she Ellen confronts Bishop and it's like she knows that the company is no good, so she does the sacrifice where she does a swan dive into the molten lead. Just as the alien queen like bursts out of her stomach, she holds on to it on her way down to the molten lava. So that was
cradling it to her breast. Again, another. I mean, it's like these movies are about motherhood and birth again and again and again, and obvious. Not even subtly, not a metaphor. It's like, this is pretty in your face, and we get it again with the ending of this. I love the conversation with Bishop, that one moment when he's like trying to be calming and he's like, no, we want to help you. And he does this hand motion, take it out of you. And that like slowly grasping fist is like, oh, so evil. And everybody knows it's so evil. Like, and Lance Henriksen did it perfectly. Like, no, I'm being calm while I make one of the most threatening gestures you could make.
Right. Also, I want to add this. This movie was an absolute tragedy because this is what Ellen feared the entire time. Like, she had nightmares about giving birth to an alien. This is the only reason why she even went back out into space, because she believed that going back out into space would stop these nightmares, because then she could stop these nightmare aliens and then stop the nightmare of an alien bursting from her chest and abdomen. Because that was one of the driving things about her even going back into space in the first place. And then Alien 3 opens. And this is one of the things that I hated about this movie. Is that they killed off the little girl and they killed off the Marine.
Hicks and Newt, that was...
Oh no, what? They killed him off like in the beginning and like unceremoniously. I was like, I was so mad at that. I was
more mad at that. Around that.
Right. Yeah. I was more mad at that.
Bad call.
I was more mad at that than anything else in this movie. But it's like, so when I watched it this time, I said, I think I can get over it. Like, I can get over it because I recognize it's a tragedy. And then it kind of focuses on Ripley. I think that was the purpose of the movie, is to refocus it on Ripley. And I guess that's why they felt like they had those two characters to die. But Newt was one of my favorite characters in cinema. So the fact that they killed her off I was just really heartbroken about that. But the sacrifice that Ripley did was really new. It kind of throws the final girl trope on its head, where the final girl doesn't actually survive. The final girl sacrifices herself in order to protect basically humanity, right? All of humanity, not just her friends and family, not just the person. She doesn't know any of these people, but just to protect humanity from the alien threat, she sacrifices herself. And that works pretty good. I enjoyed that. So ultimately...
And then then comes the least believable part of the whole movie. Morse is the only prisoner left standing. It's like, in real life, any corporation is just gonna be like, just shoot that guy. Let's go. Just shoot him, knock him into the lead, and let's go. They're not gonna patch him up and walk him out of there in cuffs. It's like, come on, he's dead.
I guess that corporation is not as callous as, as whatever.
Apparently, yeah.
they have some semblance of humanity in them, but yeah, I think I've got over most of that, and I think what saves this movie is Ellen's sacrifice at the end of the movie, which is crazy because you're thinking that the studio is expecting to make Alien 3, and they sacrificed the main character. So that's actually a brave move on the studio's part because that the studio, like I said, was interfering, right?
Yeah.
They interfered a lot. So do you have anything else that you wanted to add about your favorite parts or parts that you didn't like or anything like that?
No, I think it's an underrated movie. It's by no means a great or perfect movie. But I think that there are, looking back on it again, and it's been about 10 years since I watched it last, but it's always been a very memorable movie for me. And I've really enjoyed talking about it with you.
That's awesome. Are you familiar with, I forgot, I think they're calling it the assembly cut or the special edition cut.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've never watched it. Curious about it. I might go ahead and give that a try. Because I saw when I was trying to contemplating whether I should rent this movie or whether I should buy this movie, because I ended up buying Alien and Aliens because they were rather cheap, but Alien 3 is like $14.99. I was like,
$14. Yeah, you can, and like I was looking online, like I can get all 4 movies Blu-ray with downloads for like $19. Like, right, I'll just do that. I couldn't figure out why the worst Alien movie is $14.99. It's very strange because I was looking the same thing. Like, I know I have the 2004 quadrilogy DVD box somewhere. I couldn't find it, so I ended up renting, and I was surprised. It's like, oh yeah, this is the theatrical version because I have watched other cuts. I don't know if I've seen the assembly cut, but where it's an ox instead of a dog. And, there's some extra scenes. There's an extra shot in the Bishop confrontation at the end where after 85 hits him, he's like grabbing his ear, showing any amount of pain to the head wound he just suffered, which he doesn't do in the theatrical version. And he's screaming like, "I'm not an android." And there's actual blood coming out. But yeah, there are, I don't know if I've actually seen the assembly or just some deleted scenes. I'll have to go back and refresh myself.
Well, you may have seen it. They may have just changed the name because they wanted Fincher to be a part of it, and he didn't want to, and he didn't want it to be called the director's cut. But we'll be going over that in a minute. So that's it for our favorite parts. So we are going to switch over to the trivia. I found the 10 most interesting trivia thingamabobs that I could find on the interwebs, mostly from IMDb. So, and it was an interesting hunt because there was a lot of trauma around the making of this film. And we've alluded to this as we've been talking about it. But John, why don't you start us off?
All right. First-time director David Fincher disowned this film, stating in an interview with The Guardian, "I had to work on it for 2 years, got fired off it 3 times, and I had to fight for every single thing. No one hated it more than me. To this day, no one hates it more than me." He cited constant studio interference during production and actually walked out when the studio rejected his initial cut and ordered extensive reshoots. He was not involved in the final cut, but his initial rough cut later became the basis for the assembly cut, a longer version of the movie released on DVD in 2003 and on Blu-ray in 2010. So I must have seen the assembly cut. Although Fincher was asked to work on this assembly cut, he considered it, but eventually decided against it, giving supervising producer Charles D. Lauzarica his blessing as long as it was not called the director's cut. With regards to the new version itself, he stated that he has no comments on it as he has never seen it.
Right. It's like, nope, don't ask me about it. I'm done with that movie.
Yeah, that's fair, man.
Yeah,
that's fair.
That's absolutely fair.
Like,
I know.
I got
exactly
paid.
how you
It
feel.
sucked. I'm done.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So at one point, Fincher was denied permission by the film's producer to shoot a crucial scene in the infirmary between Ripley and the alien, where the latter menacingly closes in on Ripley. Against orders, Fincher grabbed Sigourney Weaver, a camera, and shot the scene anyway. This scene not only appears in the final cut, but also featured prominently in trailers and many regarded as the movie's most iconic shot. Like, see, student interference. Sometimes you have to lie and cheat and steal to do something that you know is right.
I mean, that shot is like, of all the Alien movies, all of them combined, that is in the top 3 shots. That is up there with Stay Away From Her, You Bitch, and the chest burst, the bursting scene from the first film. Like, those are the 3 shots that define, I think, the entire franchise. And like, you had to steal that shot. And
right.
Yeah, it was in every trailer. I remember that. And
audience, if you don't know what we're talking about, that's when the alien is like a close up of Ripley's head, and she can't move away from the alien anymore.
Yeah, she's backed against the wall.
And she's like squinching away from the alien. Is getting closer and closer. It opens its jaw, and then the tiny jaw comes out and gets closer.
Oh man, yeah.
And then there's slime everywhere. It's just absolutely slimy. Yeah, that's the part we're talking about. Okay, carry on, John.
All right. The film's production process was so chaotic and its reception by fans and critics so unfavorable that it nearly ended Fincher's career before he ever had a chance to gain momentum as a director. But 2 things ended up saving Fincher from the permanent movie jail. The first thing was that Sigourney Weaver publicly, and often angrily, sided with Fincher against 20th Century Fox, telling journalists that the studio had made decisions that resulted in an impossible situation for the young director, and that he would have an excellent career if given further chances. The other thing was that the producer Arnold Copelson knew he and didn't respect the management of Fox, and that was part of the process where he ultimately offered Fincher a new project a few years later. That project was Seven, and its massive success reignited Fincher's career, making him one of the most respected directors of his time.
Absolutely. I remember watching watching movies back then. I didn't recognize or know a lot of directors' work, but I remember watching Seven and thinking that was one of the best movies I've ever seen.
Oh my God, so good. I mean, I'm glad I didn't see it in theaters, given how old I was, but I wish I could have seen it in theaters.
I don't honestly remember where I saw it. It's one of those things where I was going to the movie because it had Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, and then it was like, I like suspense thrillers. They're pretty good. So I was like, let me give this a chance. And I was like, oh my God, that movie was awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you just leave him alone, trust in him, then you can get a great movie. And here's where I had alluded earlier. I don't know if I recorded this part, but this is where I was talking about how this kind of reminded me of Sylvester Stallone and how his kind of movie style. So like in Judge Dredd, Sylvester Stallone chose a director who was not like well known, like kind of just starting out or hadn't really done a big budget production. And the reason Stallone chose this director is because he could control this director. He could tell the director what to do. If the director wanted something, Stallone could basically just ignore him because Stallone was the producer and the star. So it wasn't like the director really had any room to maneuver, right? So he basically was at the beck and call of Stallone. And so I think that is kind of the same way with Alien 3, because you had Ridley Scott and Alien. You had James Cameron and Aliens. These are both incredible directors. And so you would think that they would follow it up by another incredible director. And they didn't. Instead, they went with there were reasons why they couldn't get some of the directors that they wanted that we'll talk about later, but they ended up getting this brand new director
for this multi-million-dollar motion picture. And that's just something that you just don't normally see. And I think the reason was that they wanted to control this director. They wanted basically a director in name only. And somebody that they can bully and push around and make a movie that the studio wanted instead of allowing the director's vision to flourish.
And then you pick David Fincher to be that. It's like
right.
Talk about boneheaded decisions.
Yeah, but see, they didn't know David Fincher because it's like this is his first movie. So they I don't know what they were thinking, right? Just I think what it was is that they didn't trust his vision. They didn't trust that he could do a movie. So they basically saddled him with probably a producer or a writer that would basically do the project for him or kind of sit behind the scenes and kind of backseat drive the movie the whole time.
Oh yeah. And the script was being rewritten all the time.
Right.
I don't know if it's one of the trivias, but yeah, it's just like, man, at one point it was going to be set on a planet made entirely of wood run by monks. Which is like, that sounds really cool. But honestly, that sounds dumber than this one.
But they do have some of the monk aspect because there's a religious component to the prisoners. So they kept some of it. But and then there are other versions that they were going to do. They were going to do a version. Well, we'll talk about it later. But there are vastly different versions of what was going to be Alien 3 before they picked the versions that they went with. But a lot of that is just like the writers trying to figure out what they're going to write. And later when the director comes in, they basically didn't trust the director and tried to take the movie away from him. And I think that they were partially successful.
Yeah.
So, all that being said, let's go to the next bit. The damages inflicted on Bishop were too severe to have Lance Henriksen work a prosthetic head while hiding under a table, chair / platform. So the filmmakers ended up having the android being played by an android. A mechanical copy of Henriksen's likeness was used in this movie's version of Bishop. At the time, it was one of the most sophisticated and state-of-the-art motion-controlled puppets ever used in a movie. And I gotta say, as I said before, that was a fantastic puppet.
Yeah, I think it holds up because it's easy enough to explain away like, well, it's all kind of jerky. It's like, yeah, it's a broken robot. Like,
right.
Anything that looks like it's a broken robot, it is a broken robot.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a can't miss situation. They could not go wrong. I think one of my favorite things about the robot puppet was that there are certain times when it kind of turns its head and there's an eye that's not covered by skin and it kind of bulges out. I was like, oh man, that's masterful work right there.
Oh yeah. So such good robotics work. Like, man.
All right.
And knowing what we've got available these days, like, I wish more people use practical stuff.
Well, here's the thing. The problem with using CGI is that a lot of times they're not giving enough time or money to work. Usually it's time. And usually it's like when the director changes their mind. It's like, I want a forest. Okay, I changed my mind. I want a swamp. And now the artists don't have enough time to work it out. But when you give them enough time and money, then it's absolutely beautiful. So some examples are obviously Avatar: The Way of Water. I didn't see it, but I've heard a lot of nice things about it. But I recently saw The Creator. Have you seen that?
I've not seen The Creator yet, but I've heard it is gorgeous.
Yeah, the effects are, to use a Transformers term, magna spectacular. So it was just, especially the androids. And it's like, even in the trailer, you can see it's like the androids like have a human head, but then in the back, they have all these robotic parts in the back. There's this huge,
okay, so sort of like a, what's that other one? With Domhnall Gleeson, and I don't know, I'm spacing on it, but, yeah, so I didn't know that they had sort of similar effects that way.
Yeah, so check out the trailer and you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
And the effects look great. And it's like, it's not like I'm missing practical effects when I see great computer effects. When I see great computer effects, like, oh, see, and when you do it right, nobody says that. Nobody says that they miss practical effects when they see great computer effects.
When it is like it's possible to do it right.
Right.
You said, it takes time and it takes money.
It's as if like if you had a practical effect and you say, okay, build me a Wolfman, and they build a Wolfman. It's like, okay, I changed my mind. I don't want a Wolfman. I want a Pigman. Well, the Pigman is going to look janky because now the effects department doesn't have enough time to make a proper looking Pigman that you wanted. You can't keep changing your mind. It's time and it's money. You got to account for that. So I think hopefully the people, the filmmakers, will recognize this and
I think
act
so.
accordingly.
Like I did just see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, and that those costumes, because I got to see the costumes in person at Universal Studios for their Halloween Horror Nights. It's like, these things look as good in person as they did on film. Like they did good work with the practicality, and that movie is a mess, but I think it'll hold up because it's a really pretty movie. Like they're like, it's gorgeous. It made a bunch of money. Yeah.
It made 130 or 180 million dollars in its first weekend. It's like, oh my God, all that money for a mediocre movie.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but listeners, if you haven't seen Five Nights at Freddy's, just be prepared for characters with the most unpredictable mood swings happening all throughout the movie.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't see it, but former co-host, my son Zachary, he saw it, because not that he's a huge Five Nights at Freddy's fan, but he is very much into video gaming. So if it's a game that he can't play, he'll watch Let's Plays or he'll be on Twitch. So he's immersed enough into Five Nights at Freddy to go want to watch that film. So I'm not sure if he liked it or not, but he's definitely one of the contributors to that massive box office haul.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, hey, good for, I like Blumhouse. I like their business model. I'm glad when they have a hit like that.
Right. Absolutely. Yay for smaller studios.
As far as bigger studios, $7 million had been spent on sets that were never used thanks to ever-changing scripts. Before filming had even started, with deadline looming whenever director David Fincher called writer Rex Pickett to discuss his progress on the script, he would let the phone ring twice, hang up, and call again so that Pickett knew it was Fincher and not the studio harassing him with more demands for changes. Kids, we used to not have texting. Just saying that.
Oh, not only did we not have texting, but we didn't have caller ID most of the time. We didn't have when the phone rang, you had no idea who was calling. Like
you just had to pick it up and answer and talk to somebody,
or do what John just described. You had to have a code, like knock 3 times and then wait and then knock again and then I'll open the door. You had to do that with telephones.
During filming, the script was still constantly being rewritten, with new versions faxed to the studio on a near daily basis. Cast and crew often filmed a scene and learned the next day that it had already been scrapped. That had to be demoralizing. That's rough.
Yeah, that is rough. And I don't know who to blame on this. I think some of this falls on the studios and some of this probably falls on Fincher himself. But yeah, that's kind of must. You go through all of that work and it's like, well, we're not using it. I was like, that's kind of messed up. So while off the set, Sigourney Weaver had to wear a wig as her then 10-year-old daughter, Charlotte, didn't like to see her mother bald. And that's just sweet.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it has become, I don't know, was G.I. Jane before this or after this? But I remember they made a huge deal of Demi Moore shaving her head. And then, it's gone on. We've got Charlize Theron. We've got, V for Vendetta. Why am I spacing?
Shoot.
Natalie Portman.
I was about to say Princess Amidala.
Queen Amidala. Natalie Portman. Like, it's always, we always make a big deal about it in just society as movie consumers. Like, oh, this actress shaved her head. And
right.
It was, I remember for this, it was a big deal too that she shaved her head.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I remember watching a segment on Entertainment Tonight about shaving her head for this movie.
like, Entertainment Tonight, there's a lot more cool, like, messed up stuff happening behind the scenes. You should maybe report on that. But no, let's talk about shaving her head. Yeah. Michael Biehn stated in an interview that he was deeply hurt that he wasn't asked to return as Corporal Dwayne Hicks, his character from Aliens. But even more so that the film opened with Hicks immediately being killed off after escaping with the other survivors at the end of the previous movie. He stated that he didn't mind Hicks dying per se, but objected to the careless way they did it. In this film, he therefore refused to the studio permission to use a dummy of a corpse in his likeness, but allowed them to use his photograph. Apparently, Biehn received more money for the use of this one image than for his entire role in Aliens. Good for him. Biehn later stated that he had any idea of the kind of career Fincher would have, he might have been more accommodating in the hopes of getting a chance to work with him on a subsequent project. Carrie Henn, who played Newt, on the other hand, was more accepting of her character's death, simply stating, "Life goes on."
Right.
And I mean, I gotta say, like, I can understand Bean's regret there, because Fincher does reuse a lot of performers. There's people in this who he used in several other films. It's like, ooh, man, yeah, that has to, again, the hindsight on that has to be really painful.
And not only that, but it was kind of a misunderstanding. Like, he had been told, like, how the scripts are always changing. So the way he was told that his character died in the movie was different from how it was actually shot, how they actually was going to have the character die.
Oh, okay.
So it was because of this, he was reacting to his misunderstanding of how Corporal Hicks dies, not the fact that Corporal Hicks died. So
yeah,
it's it's a little bit tragic. And he might have gone on to be in 7 or something, but nope.
Yeah.
So Lance Henriksen only agreed to reprise his role as Bishop as a personal favor to Walter Hill. To this day, Henriksen has said that he dislikes the film for its nihilistic themes, although he had a lot of fun making it. And I can imagine that.
I mean, all of the Alien films have nihilistic themes. Like, these first 3 films, the one thing you never see is humans having the upper hand against the aliens. Like, there is never a moment where it's like, oh, we have this plan. It's like, oh, we've got its back against the wall. We're gonna win, and then get a rug pull. Like, no, you are all dead. You are all dead except 1 or 2 people.
I think
like, the outget.
I think the main difference between Alien 3 and the previous Aliens is that it starts off kind of hopeful. Like, in the first movie, you got some explorers. Well, not really explorers. You got some miners just doing the day-to-day. And it's like there's certain hope that they'll get back home and carry on with their lives. Ripley is hoping to get back and she can be with her daughter again. There's a sense of optimism and hope kind of throughout the movie. It's like, even when the alien attacks, there's a optimism and hope that somebody is
they gotta get that bonus, man.
Yeah, and get that bonus, absolutely. And then in the second movie, there's a sort of optimism and hope that they can finally solve the alien problem by sending in the Marines, and the Marines are just blow everything up, or blow up all the aliens, and the colony could live on with their lives. They'll be rescued, and Ella and Ripley can go back home without having nightmares, and continuing on with her life. So there's a kind of hopefulness there. But she goes to this prisoners. The prisoners have no hope of leaving this life that they had chosen for themselves. So it's like they're just kind of making out the best type of life they can. And then there's an alien threat looming that Ripley refuses to talk about, and then until it's too late. And then the 2 of the characters from the previous films, 3 of the characters from the previous film, they've been basically killed off
unceremoniously.
Unceremoniously off screen. And then there's this also where Ripley kind of sacrifices herself at the end. So, and the only person that kind of gets out of that scenario is just some perfunctory, right? Just some basically just an office worker, because like most of the prisoners, maybe a couple of the other prisoners kind of survived the alien attack. But it wasn't much of, you don't feel hopeful when you watch this film. There's no sense of, when they leave, they get to go on to a better life. Like, nobody goes on to a better life.
No. Corporate is just like, oh, darn.
Yeah,
all right,
yeah,
shut it
yeah.
down and let's go home. Turn off the lights.
Right. Absolutely. So,
that's another thing. All the closing shots of them shutting the whole place down, like
right.
everything's neatly put away. Like that's not how anybody shuts a place down. They just walk out and turn off the lights.
Right. It's like they're leaving to go on vacation.
Yeah. Like, wow, this corporation is very fastidious about this.
Absolutely.
All right. Although the alien that hatched from the dog was a rod puppet, early film tests used an actual dog in an alien costume. The dog was a whippet owned by one of the special effects people, which was used to be dressed up in a suit and muzzle. However, the special effects team thought the dog's movements made the alien look rather comical, so the idea was scrapped in favor of a puppet. I think there's footage somewhere of those tests with the dog. I got to look it up and see, but I can imagine that looked pretty funny.
Right, because the dog is trying to be cute. The dog is
Yeah.
still cute. It's like, oh my God, it's still
Sit,
it's the
and
cutest
alien
little
sits,
thing.
yeah.
Right. It's the dog is used to being cute. You just put this fancy costume on. It's like, oh, it's Halloween. Okay, cool. Let's go trick or treating. Right.
And it's like, man, I loved the idea that this movie introduced of whatever the face hugger implants, the alien is somewhat based off of that host when it comes out. This is a more dog-like alien. It's like, what if a face hugger got on a dolphin? What how many different kinds of aliens could we have, like depending on what type of animal it latches onto? Like that could be a giraffe alien, like you could have a lot of different
alien.
HR Geiger designs. Yeah.
Yeah. He must have a plethora of designs. He must have had like 1,000 alien designs, all based on different types of species. So, moving right along, I think this is our last one. Making the convicts bald-headed due to a lice problem was David Fincher's idea. When he told Sigourney Weaver this during their first meeting, she immediately thought it was a great idea to be bald. When Fincher asked how she felt about shaving her head for the role, she jokingly replied, "It's fine with me as long as I get more money." So, yeah, I like that.
You gotta get that bonus.
Great
come on.
negotiation tactic.
Yeah. Good for her.
Absolutely. I mean, and like she's a woman in film, she's going to be filming something else after this. She filmed something before this. Like she's in demand. You can't be asking actresses to chop off their hair. It's like you gotta pay them more money. It's because it's like that's part of why they get hired is the face, right? That's the whole
it's
point.
Like this. Yeah, it's like my performance is one thing, but I am recognizable. That's why people come to see movies with me in them. So yeah, that's fair.
It reminds me.
I hope she did. I hope she got paid a lot.
Yeah, me too. It reminds me of I can't remember his name right now. He was in Machete, the famous Mexican actor.
Oh, Danny Trejo?
Yeah, Danny Trejo. He said that exact thing. He says, he was being hired and he had all of these lines in the script and he was kind of nervous about it. He had talked about it and the guy couldn't understand why he was so nervous. And he said, "You don't understand. They only hired me for the face." So
that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for the trivia, and now we're going to find out what the critics thought. So we're in the critics thought segment. The critics on IMDb gave it a 47% audience score. Similarly, has it at did I say 97? I meant to say 47. Oops. The critics had it at 47%. The audience similarly has it at 47%. On Rotten Tomatoes, on IMDb, it's at 6.4 out of 10. So just across the board, very similar scores.
Yeah.
It's a
I'm gonna agree with IMDb more than Rotten Tomatoes. For
right,
sure.
Right. As a matter of fact, it's much higher than I would have expected on IMDb. So I think there are a lot of people like you that have gone back to the film and considered, reevaluated and have thought that, it's much better than they remember it. And I would like to say that after getting over Newt and Hicks' death, I was like, you know what, this movie is a little bit better now. It's like you have to get over that, and then once you get over that, it's much better.
So David Anston from Newsweek at the time said in his review, just at the point when Alien 3 should kick into high terror gear, it becomes clear that this hushed, somber sequel doesn't know how to deliver the goods. And Jake Cole from the Slant magazine said, for all its inherent structural problems, Alien 3 remains a worthy intended conclusion to the series, finding its true resolution in Ripley's resolve to break the endless cycle of her torment. I agree with that. Like, it was supposed to be the end of the story.
Yeah. Breaking the cycle of her torment by sacrificing yourself is rather sad, but sometimes it's gotta happen. Jeff Andrew from Time Out wrote, good acting has salvaged many a poor script in the past, but not here. I would say, no, it kind of did. It kind of
At least he's saying the acting was good, which it is. The performances are very good in this film.
Yeah. I would have agreed with him 30 years ago, but now I'm like, it's a little bit better now that I've watched it again. And then finally, Trace Thurman from Horror Queers podcast wrote, a bold tonal departure from its immediate predecessor, Alien 3 nonetheless weaves its nihilistic self under your skin and refuses to leave. Yeah, there's some truth to that. There's some truth to that statement. So that's what we have our critics say. You've heard our say. So finally, Alien 3 is, as of this recording, available on streaming. That's it for today. In a fortnight, we'll be back with the next sequel, Alien Resurrection. I've reorganized our social media.
I can't wait to hear that one too.
It's going to be fun. I'm going to have fun guest hosts. There's Rod and Karen from the Black Guy Who Dips podcast. And there's some great associates, some great, I hesitate to call people friends because I only know them through Zoom, but
right.
I like, in my heart of heart, I consider all of you friends and family. But they have a great show. They're really huge science fiction fans. They're comic fans, superhero movie fans. So excited to have them on the show. And Alien Resurrection is one of my favorite Alien films. I'll just put that out there. It kind of goes back to what Aliens was with James Cameron. So I can't wait to watch that one again.
I mean, I love Jean-Pierre Jeunet films. I love him as director. And I was so excited. I like Alien Resurrection too. I think I like Alien 3 better, but Alien Resurrection is a wild ride.
Right. So, on another note, I've reorganized our social media accounts so that you can follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, or Threads at Backlit Cinema. I've done it. I brought them all under one name, at Backlit Cinema, on any social media that you might be a part of. And there I am. And also, thank you, John, for give me that invite to Blue Sky, or at least I know you had a say in it. I appreciate that. Even though Blue Sky is kind of bare bones, but I'm sure as time goes on, it'll grow and it'll have better functionality and whatnot. But I feel like I'm exclusive. I'm in an exclusive club. It's like, oh, I got an invite. Look at yours.
That's how they get you, man. That's how they get you.
So once again, you can follow me on all of my social media presence on just by following at Backlit Cinema. And also, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can leave an email at fanmail@backlitcinema.com. And John, do you have any additional plugs?
Just once again, check out at Open Pike on all social medias and go to openpike.com. If you haven't watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds, if you haven't watched much Star Trek at all, it is a great starter introduction to Star Trek. Like, you can step into Strange New Worlds not knowing a single thing about Star Trek and you will enjoy it.
I concur. I tell people a lot of the time, it's like if they haven't watched any Star Trek at all, Strange New World is a great jumping on point. If there's so much Star Trek on television right now, like even if you're talking about like the recent shows that have come out there, they're not like having new episodes, but they're still being streamed on Paramount Plus. And they wanted to start like, do I start with Picard? Do I start with Discovery? Start with Strange New Worlds.
Start with Strange New Worlds.
And it'll spoil you. You may not want to watch other shows after that, but yeah, definitely start with that one. And then move over to, what was the other one called? Lower Decks. Move over to Lower Decks. They're neck
Lower
and neck.
Decks requires more homework than Strange New Worlds does, but not enough that you can't enjoy the show if you don't know all the references.
Right.
And it's so good.
Right.
The finale of this most recent season, oh my God, the animation is beautiful.
Right. I got it. I haven't checked it out yet. I had contemplated watching the show before I started the podcast, but I could not get out of bed this morning. I was in full laziness mode. But
hey man, that's fair.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that you're right where you need to do homework to have the full enjoyment of Lower Decks. It would help to watch some of the shows to get some of the references. But I would argue that even if you hadn't watched any of the other shows, that you will still get some enjoyment. Like you might not get, like there's one episode, it's like the penultimate episode where they had shown the binars. And my reaction is, like another person might be like, okay, you got some weird looking aliens. But my reaction is, oh my God, they brought back the binars.
They brought back these guys who were in one episode of Next Generation 35 years ago. And they dug deep for some of those references.
They did dig a considerable amount. I think what I enjoy about Lower Decks specifically is that you have to be a real fan to produce that show. There are some things that they really enjoy about Star Trek, or they really enjoy poking fun of. Like, and I think it was in that same episode, they brought back the two-handed punch that Mariner was using to fight off her adversaries or whatever. The famous Captain Kirk two-handed punch.
Fu.
That they did in the first season. That was the best implementation of that joke. But I like that they brought the joke back for this particular episode.
Yeah. So even Picard makes a joke about that at one point.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I missed that one.
It was, in season 2 when they're on the bus, when Rios is on the bus and he's fighting a guard off, he like does that and he's like, man, that just felt strong, you know?
Okay, I know the scene you're talking about. I feel like I need to rewatch that episode because that's funny. For some reason I missed that joke. But those are some great shows, and you couldn't have a better companion podcast than Open Pike Night.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. I know you've enjoyed our guest, John T. Boat, so please listen to Open Pike Night and Green Shirt, A Newbie's Guide to Trek. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.